I think we're going to be starting. Great. So folks can just take their seats. Hello and welcome. I suppose good evening. Thank you for braving the snowstorm to be here. I'm sure there's lots of stories. This event is brought to you by WPIRG. It's our 40th anniversary this year, and we're a social justice and environmental justice group on campus that's student-driven and volunteer-driven. So if you'd like to know any more, there's plenty of people in the room that you could ask, including myself. Or you could just come up to the third floor in the Student Life Center, and that's where we are most days, always. I'm thrilled to introduce our speakers tonight, but before that we have a couple of people that are going to say a few words. Just going to remind folks that we have books for sale. They're $10 each, Selma's books, and a couple of different merchandise stuff, and there's some material on the other side of the room as well. And then there's free WPIRG bags, classic. No coffee, but there's hot chocolate and tea and some light snacks, so please help yourself and feel free to walk around. Yeah, I guess that's all I needed to say. I'm going to have Erin from the Women's Centre come up and say a few words. That was partnering with us. They held their International Women's Week events last week, and this is part of our effort as well. So I'm going to pass you this little speaker thing.
Hi, welcome. My name is Erin Perry, and I'm the coordinator for the UW Women's Center. The Women's Center, I just want to say hi to you guys, and thank you for being here. I hope the sun has welcomed you. So the Women's Center is a service on campus. It's located in SLC I can't remember the number of my room. It's on the banner over there. And we provide lots of things to students. We have a library with lots of resources. We have access, we provide condoms and tampons and things like that for students, and we hold lots of really cool events. Last week, like you mentioned, was International Women's Week, so we held bus casting. We have really awesome coordinating with WPIRG, and we have a couple of discussion nights that went really well. So yeah, I'm glad we get to partner with you guys for this event, and thank you. So I'll pass it back to you.
That's great. Anybody else that needed to speak? No? That's it. Oh yes, thank you for being here.
One more. Okay.
Yeah, and Selma is going to come up and say a few words as well, and then I'll get a chance to talk with the shoppers.
I don't really have a few words to say, but hi, my name is Selma. I'm from Women's Studies, and I'm also from Women's Studies Student Society. We have some pamphlets and booklets that you could take, but if you have any questions regarding women's studies, I'll be around here after the event for a little bit, so you can come to me and ask me any questions. And we are actually very happy that we were able to endorse this event with WPIRG, so thank you.
Thank you. And before I do a short introduction for Selma, I just wanted to check in with the audience and the speakers. We have a couple of people taking pictures. Mostly Alex will be taking a few pictures, so if you're uncomfortable with photography at all, please let her know, or if you see that a picture is going to be taken of you, you can raise your hand and your face will be blurred out, all of that stuff. Just in case. But mostly I believe it will be the speakers. And Phoebe might take a couple of pictures as well. And we have video going. So if you're uncomfortable at all, just let us know and we can accommodate you. And as I said before, I'm thrilled to introduce tonight's speakers. I'll be introducing Selma, who will be speaking first. Selma James has spent a lifetime involved in radical causes and working in revolutionary movements. She was born in Brooklyn, New York, and raised in a movement household, joined a Marxist collective at age 15 that went on to make some unique contributions to the movements of that time and long after. As a 22-year-old factory worker with a small child, James wrote A Woman's Place based on her experience and the experiences of those around her. From 1958 to 1962, she lived in Trinidad with her partner, Trinidadian theorist, historian, and anti-capitalist organizer C.L.R. James, where they were active in the movement for West Indian independence and federation. Returning to England after independence, Selma continued to write, organize, and agitate on anti-racist feminism. In 1972, Selma founded the International Wages for Housework campaign. She coined the word unwaged to describe most of the caring work women do, which has since entered the English language to describe all the work done without wages by all people, in the home, on the land, in the community, etc. In 1975, Selma became the first spokesperson of the English Collective of Prostitutes. In 1982, the ECP occupied a church in London for 12 days and articulated 6 powerful demands for sex workers' rights. From ending the brutality from police, rapists, and pimps against sex workers, to social services for women who wanted to leave that system. In her 1983 publication, Marx and Feminism, Selma broke with established Marxist theory by providing a reading of Marx's Capital from the point of view of women and unwaged work. Selma continues to pull apart power relations within feminism, within feminist and working class movements, and continues to organize across sectors despite divisions of sex, race, and class, age, and the global south and the global north. And as with the global women's strike that she and Nichola will discuss tonight. I'm now going to invite one more set of people. Surprise. Hannah and Yumna, who are part of the reading group that has been reading and discussing Selma's book, Sex, Race, and Class. It's also here for sale. And they're going to be talking about some of the highlights of the book and reading groups.
Hello, my name is Yumna. I'm currently in third year Peace and Conflict Studies student at Waterloo. Me, Hannah, and Dali, who couldn't make it today, have been organizing discussion groups for the past several weeks discussing Selma James's book, Sex, Race, and Class. Basically, we assign certain chapters, and then we hold a discussion based on the chapter that we read, or the couple of chapters we read for that week. So we're actually having one next week. If anyone is interested in coming out, it's going to be in SLC room 3103. So I'm going to talk about something. And we particularly cater to women and trans folk. So it's a place where we hope to create a safe haven for you to speak freely in a safe, enclosed area with no judgment. It's a great place to be. So I'm just going to speak about one aspect out of the many aspects that I like about Selma James's work. One thing that interested me, because I'm an Egyptian Canadian student, the Palestinian struggle has always been something that I hold close to my heart. And recently I've been learning more about the Holocaust, so I've kind of learned about, I've kind of expanded my knowledge on that kind of area of the formation of Israel and the history behind it. And I found it interesting, one aspect of Selma James's work is that she works, I'm going to get the name wrong, it's International Jewish Solidarity Network.
Anti-Zionist.
It's an anti-Zionist network. And I find that actually, I commend Selma for it because she's a Jewish woman who is an anti-Zionist, and I know that a lot of Jewish people who are anti-Zionist get a lot of flack for it. So I find that commendable. And one thing that Selma said in one of her talks was that you can't be anti-racist if you're not anti-Zionist. That's one thing that I really enjoyed about what she said. One thing that kind of translates into some stuff that we've been talking about during the discussion group is that she mentioned that the Jews that were sent to concentration camps weren't sent because they were Jews, but because they were socialists and communists, and they were opposing the Nazis in the street. So basically their political views. So that was one aspect that kind of brought a different side to, I guess, what we're learning about Zionism. And she said that her parents or her dad, anytime he passed by a Zionist, he would spit and then she mentioned that because Zionists were the bosses, So the theory of Zionism is basically for a group of people to rule over the rest of the Jews. And yeah, I find that interesting. It kind of plays into capitalism and patriarchy. Yeah. Here's Hannah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sandra. My name is Hannah, and I was also lucky enough to be a part of this discussion group that we had around Selma James's book, which was amazing. Just coming together with a bunch of people to not only read about things that are really interesting and invigorating, but also discuss it and bring kind of the words that are there to life, and then now actually being able to meet Selma. It's just amazing. So I'm also in Peace and Conflict Studies. I'm a second-year student, and I'm dedicated to social justice and an anti-war advocate. And so Selma's position on investing in caring, not killing, was something that I found very interesting and love that idea. Selma James is a longtime coordinator with the Global Women's Strike, who's, I think I wrote it down here, who calls the recognition and payment for all caring work and the return of military spending to the community, starting with the women, the main carers everywhere. So basically, as an anti-war advocate, any military cuts is a good thing in my mind. I hear so much more about how we're spending more and more on military, and that's not getting us anywhere near to a more peaceful world. And so this idea of investing in people who are already doing work in the house or work through caring and through nurturing, instead of investing in the work of killing and the work of destruction and the work of death. I think that kind of switch of perception so that we make it more of a norm to invest in caring instead of investing in killing, I think is a really brilliant idea. So that was what stuck with me. So I'm really glad that you're here and that we can learn from you today, and I hope you challenge us and push us and kind of make us rethink some things today.
Thank you.
Okay, we're almost there. It's my pleasure to introduce Nichola Marcus, who is also part of the Global Women's Strike, and from Guyana with an organization called Red Thread, which I'm a little embarrassed to say I didn't know anything about, even though I studied political science and international relations for, I'm going to age myself, over 10 years now. And yeah, I didn't hear anything about this group, which is not surprising given the political economy of these things, where sometimes the best grassroots groups are the ones that get the least attention in terms of media, international conferences, NGOs, and that. But the more I learn about the group and about Nichola, and I think you'll find she's an exciting speaker and organizer, and their group does incredible work organizing grassroots women in Guyana and Caribbean as well, across really difficult divisions of race, ethnicity, of culture. And I think that is something that's a foundation of Selma's ideas and the political groups that she's been a part of. And it's our treat today that we get to hear a bit the theory and the history of those ideas, but also see from Nichola, see those ideas put down in practice in a concrete setting today. So I'm really excited to hear what Nichola has to say about some of the nuts and bolts organizing that Global Women's Strike does in Guyana, and I'm really happy that you're here and really looking forward to it.
Well, thank you very much. I'm really pleased to be here, and I have to say why. The first thing is that somehow I feel that this meeting is the beginning of a new stage in the movement, which is popping up all about in a lot of places in the world. But when we got the invitation from Alex to come here, we knew that you all were working towards building a movement. And that's the only thing, it seems to me, worth doing if we want to save the world. Change it in order to save it. So that's really good for me. It's really something that we've been waiting for an awfully long time. The second reason that I'm glad to be here is that Nichola is with me. We have been building a network, an international network, across not only national boundaries, but across sectors, across levels of power, across race, across all kinds of divisions. And we do it in small, because if we try to do it in big, we'll fail. Especially when the movement outside is not strong. But we do it, and we do it meticulously, being mutually accountable to each other. Please try to remember, if you remember anything of what I say this evening, mutually accountable to each other. I have to be accountable to Nichola so that she knows I'm always backing her, and she has to be accountable to me so that I know that she's always backing me. Once that is established, which is very difficult to do, especially when the movement is not strong, once that is established, you can accomplish all kinds of things that other people thought was impossible. Okay, so those are the two reasons I'm glad to be here. What I thought I could do was to, I know that you've been studying the book. Those who spoke said what had struck them particularly, and I was very glad to hear that you found it useful. I think that as the ideas, as the movement comes up, ideas will open up and you will be discussing, and what I might be able to do this evening is to give a framework perhaps for the discussions that you might have, that you will consider this framework when you're finding your way to what will undoubtedly be new politics. I have to say that we in London are very dependent on Guyana in terms of new politics. We learn from what they do. We fight with them occasionally. We both win. And we learn and understand more because of what they are doing, and I hope the same is true of Guyana.
Of course it is.
She says yes. Remember that. So I'm going to make 4 points fundamentally. The first is, the outline I'm going to give is about the women's movement, but I have to say it can be about any movement, it can be about any sector. The framework is the same. What changes is the particular content that we are discussing. And this is the women's movement. The first thing is, what we found out, what we were thinking when we began the women's movement. The second is what we found out in building the women's movement. The third is where we're at now, what we know about what the conflicts are. And finally, what do we do about it? What is it that is needed? Okay. Now, from the beginning, there was a conflict in the movement because there was a conflict, and it was a conflict of class. The women's movement from its very inception was split. We didn't know it was split. We thought we were all together. We were euphoric. We loved it. We were discussing every single thing under the sun that related to women. And that was very thrilling because it was the first time we were speaking about it, or even acknowledging it, or even finding out about it, and what we thought and what we felt. It was all very exciting. But it was already going in opposite directions. One of them was towards careers. That women were going to get into high places, and they were going to help us. They were going to get into parliament, they were going to get into the professions, they were going to get into the universities, they were going to get into all kinds of places where there was some power to influence events and make it easier for women, all of us, to move up. Well, that was a theory. Some of us wanted to know what we were going to get now for now, as they say in Trinidad, right now. And we felt that we had to begin with ourselves as grassroots women and acknowledge that there was a power relation between women and men, undoubtedly a power relation, but that that power relation was an expression of class relations. So that women, on the whole, were the carers, and men were the breadwinners. And because they had money for their work and we didn't have money for ours, there was a conflict of interest within the family. There was a crisis. One had the power in the family and one did not. That's where we began in a society where there was a certain number of single mothers, but they didn't predominate as they do today. And by the way, you have to say that the number of single mothers that proliferate, and in the world it's millions, obviously, and increasingly, is an expression precisely of this power relation, because one way that women dealt with the power relation was to lead the men. It's a way of dealing with it. It's not necessarily completely satisfactory on an international level, that the sexes are at each other's throats, as we often are, but it was part of a struggle that women made. Now, I believed, and I was uncertain, but I was pretty sure that what we as a women's movement should demand, which would bring us together and which would base ourselves on the grassroots, was for women to have a wage for our work. And the storm proceeded of enormous, worse than what happened today. This was nothing.
Can I just cut you off for 1 second? I'm really sorry. But we have, if anyone needs, does anyone need sign language interpretation?
I beg your pardon.
Oh,
Sure.
they just came late because of the storm,
right,
so sorry.
right.
Does anyone need it? Just let us know. Okay, if someone else comes in later and need it, just come see me. I'll be sitting right here, and then we can have that set up for you. Okay, sorry.
Good. There was, I had to find myself. Anyway, that was where the Wages for Housework campaign came from, and there was a lot of controversy about it. Many women felt this would institutionalize us in the home. And me, you know, I have so many lovely things in my home, I thought this would be nice. But to be more serious, they meant that we would never go out of the home or be free of the burden of caring work and of seeing after everybody. In fact, we pointed out that some women are we are all institutionalized in that caring work, even if we're not married, even if we're not with a man. You know that it is women who are doing the caring work in every department of the society and assumed to be doing it, and still to this day assumed that we will do it. And that this is not solved, you know, by what they were proposing, which was that women go out to work. Now, some people had some very backward ideas about women going out to work, and it was not lost on some of us that when they said that if women went out to work, they would raise their consciousness and they would have trade union consciousness, that what they were proposing was that if women went out to work, they would get a consciousness as high as men's. This was rather sexist, because in our view, women had a much more comprehensive idea of what is happening in the society and what they wanted to see change. Now, as we began to look at what was happening, what really we began to find out was, first of all, that despite the divisions among us, first of all, the gender division, the division of race, the division of age, nationality, the many divisions, and despite that some of us were waged and some of us were unwaged, that we were all part of the same class. We were all workers in the society for capitalism. And this was an entirely new thought. At least I didn't know anybody who thought that. And that women produced labor power, that is, that women were workers for capitalism in the sense that we were producing all the workers of the world. We later really came to a much better formulation where we said women reproduce the human race, which is rather important, or at least some of us think it's quite important. And that meant that although we were all part of the same class, there were power relations within that class which, in order for it to unite, had to be addressed. And that was our basic assumption. This was not generally accepted, and we just went out on our own fundamentally. We also began more closely to look at the work that women did. It's all very well to say we do housework, but what does it comprise? It's caring. It's justice work. There has been a tremendous struggle of prisoners in the United States. 30,000 prisoners last year came out on hunger and work strike. I'm sure some of you know about it. And who was fighting for them outside were their mothers, daughters, sisters, wives. They were always the women doing the justice work, dealing with the racism that their sons faced, and sometimes also their daughters. Women were always protecting others, and they were pardon me, they were organizers against capitalism, but nobody saw that it was the case because they were working for people they loved. They were doing the justice work for people they loved. In addition to that, women were the agricultural workers in the world. Until very recently, 80% of the food consumed in Africa was produced by women unwaged, and there was no sign in the national statistics of any country that work was going on when the agricultural work was going on. There was no proof that women were, it was not work, it was what women did. Okay? This is absolutely crucial. I have to remind you something that some feminists sometimes forget. If you spend your life, if you spend 8 or 10 hours every day working, that is a lot, most of your waking life. So work is not something other than your life. Work, is a contribution to the society, at least you hope it is, and it takes a lot, often most of your life, especially if you are a woman on the land who's feeding her family from that land. I'm going to move along. Oh, maybe this will help me. What is the situation we find ourselves in now? A lot of women have got positions of power, but we have not seen them stand with women. They have not changed, they have not overthrown the hierarchy among us, the power relations among us. They have moved up in the hierarchy instead, and in that way reinforced it against us. A woman has done a book recently about what has happened among women. The class line was always there. There were always women of the upper class and always women of the working class and always women in the middle class. That's not new. But what has happened is that the women who have moved up into the professions, into management, into boardrooms, into governments. Those women who comprise about 13% of the female population in the UK, the book is a UK book, those women don't live the lives like the rest of us. They are not carers most of the time. They are dependent very often on immigrant women to take care of their families if they have them. They are not often subject to inequalities of pay. Once you've reached that level, you can get rich as quick as the next guy. But they have no point of contact in a way with our struggle, except to keep their mouths shut when we make it or complain about it. They've also peopled a lot of NGOs. I want to give one example. In the UK, there are a number of organizations around rape that women have formed. Many, if not most, and I think it is most, are funded by the police or the Home Office or other institutions that are closely related to the government, which means that they don't complain too much about what the police do or do not do in relation to rape. This is not what we formed a movement to do. We formed a movement to change the world, to change everything, to change the relations among us entirely. We formed a movement because we wanted to change the world for women and therefore for men. And these women have not done that. That remains still for us to do. Now, I thought, I spoke with Alex and I thought maybe I should say, I use the word movement, maybe I should say what I mean by the word movement. Many of you have not experienced it because there has not been that full-fledged movement really since the 70s, where thousands of people can often go into the street. I understand that there was a great movement in Quebec among the students and that it hasn't died away, and that is a fantastic example of what many of us can follow if we choose. But certainly to find out what it means when a whole set of people with varying views come together because they see goals that they share, and they gather the power of each of the individuals who is involved, and they have a constant impact on their society in the direction that they want the society to go. That means their creativity is just exposed, opened, inspired. All kinds of people have different ideas about how they can get their ideas and their feelings and their needs and their perspective across. They are empowered really by their collectivity. And it's the collectivity based on individuality which makes a movement so powerful, movements which we have seen before. It's that kind of a movement that we need now. And I wanted to give you some ideas, not how to build a movement. I hope maybe we'll have some discussions about that tomorrow, but some of the things that people have done which enables us to know that whether there's a movement or not, there are all kinds of struggles going on which indicate our possibilities and our hopes, and which enable us to organize where we are about our own needs, always in connection and in relation to what other people are doing. I mentioned the agricultural work that, for example, African women do. In the 1980s, as you probably know, the IMF was giving all kinds of instructions to the third world with structural adjustment. And what they were proposing, which the Kenya government was very happy to oblige and follow, was that women shouldn't do subsistence farming. What they should do was cash crops, so that they would produce for the market rather than for their own subsistence. Since the men were taking the money and the women and children were doing the work, it often meant that there was no money for food for the women and children, and ultimately the women rebelled. Now, you don't know a lot about this. I did a lot about this. You know, the terrible thing about your work not being counted is that your struggle is invisible with it. People don't know the struggle you are making because somehow they don't know exactly who your enemy is. They don't know exactly how you're spending your life. They don't know the kinds of conflicts that you're engaged in. But I just read this. They produced coffee, okay? They didn't want to produce coffee. The penalty for damaging coffee trees was imprisonment for 7 years. In 1990, women responded defiantly to the long-standing deterrent, saying the police come and bring money. If the police come and bring money to pay for labor in coffee, then they don't mind. Soon uprooting coffee was so widespread as to be unstoppable. They just cut the coffee and they planted the crops that they wanted. The whole country was doing this. The women all over who were producing coffee destroyed it. I made a small list of other things that had happened, and now I can't find it. No, I don't know what I've done with it. No, it's the one before. Here it is. I mentioned the prisoners. Recently, the students in the UK, in Birmingham, have come out on strike for free education, or at least the lowering of education, and finally, but they didn't come out only for that. The whole university was involved in the sense they said, we want pay equity, we want a living wage for all staff, and in addition to that, we want a council now which will invite all members of the university to be part of the decision-making body. They want to take the university away from the power structure, and I want to say something further about the role that universities have played in the period of repression from which we're coming out. You know, I think it's summed up by, I wrote something called Sex, Race and Class, and somebody told me I had done intersectionality, and I didn't know what they meant. And they said, no, well, you've written about it. And I found out that the power relations that I described between gender, between races, between age, immigration status, language, nation, all of the power relations which we are so familiar with since we live with them all the time, sexual choice, disability, that this was now labeled as intersectionality, and it's the kind of work against the movement that universities tend to do, because intersectionality does not describe power relations. As a matter of fact, it causes them to disappear. You cannot see the power relations in intersectionality. It looks like people intersect. But a race riot is not an intersection. Racial profiling is not an intersection, nor is rape, nor is unemployment without welfare. All of these crises in our lives, which are caused by precisely the hierarchy among us, including the hierarchy of class, are not described by intersectionality. And that kind of description of what the movement is developing to understand itself, to understand the lives that we live, are often summed up in ways that do not advance us and that prevent us from knowing concretely what our lives are and in finding out what other people's lives are as well. There are a couple of other things that I just want to mention before I give the platform to my sister. One of the strengths of the network that we formed, and I think terribly important to any movement we want to build, is collectivity on the one hand and autonomy on the other. Each of us has a case to make. Each sector of us has a case to make. And as we come together to make that case, we bear in mind other sectors and how what we want can be advanced in ways that don't scab on them, that don't undermine them, that reinforce them, and that invite them to join us, or at least to work with us side by side, so that we are working together as much as we can, but we do not allow any sector's needs or wants or aspirations or perspective to be hidden. We are undermining that hierarchy where some people matter and some people don't. And autonomy is the most important weapon we have for establishing that. Okay, I think that's what I want to open with, and I hope we'll have more discussion at the end when both of us have spoken. I want to give the platform to my sister, who has done fantastic work, she herself and her organization, from which we have learned a great deal, and she has some important information to impart. Thank you.